Close your eyes, feel the hush. Out here, in the wide breadth of the cosmos, everything slows. There is no wind in space, no rustling of trees, no ticking of clocks, only the quiet hum of distance and light. The stars blink softly above, not hurried, not loud, just present. And in this great silence there is a pull, not sudden, not sharp, a pull that doesn't yank or scream, but waits, patient, invisible. This is how black holes begin, not with chaos, but with a pause. You drift in the calm of space, where gravity feels like memory, faint but unshakable. You can't see it, but you can sense its arms wrapping around everything. It doesn't announce itself with sound, but with motion, or the lack of it. Where other stars spin and shine, something in the darkness does not. It simply disappears. A black hole does not draw attention. It doesn't need to. Its silence is the message. Light bends near it, like reeds in water, curving and trembling before it vanishes entirely. You watch photons arc inward, trying to flee, but unable to escape. Even light, swift as thought, slows here, and so do you. You float gently near this cosmic hush. You feel your body relax, as if the black hole, far away, is untying tension itself. It isn't malevolent. It isn't alive. But it has a kind of presence, like the gravity of someone walking into a quiet room. You notice it, though it says nothing. The black hole pulls, but not like the earth pulls you down. It doesn't tug. It leans on the fabric of space, pressing so deeply into it that the fabric caves in. Space wraps around it like a bedsheet under a marble, stretched and bowed. And if gravity had a voice, it would be a whisper here, the kind that asks you to come closer, not to fall, but to fade. There is peace in that idea, that something can be strong without noise, that forgetting can be part of the design, because black holes do not scream. They are not raging voids, but delicate endings. They are the universe's way of letting go, of folding what once was into a place where time loses its shape. You begin to feel how strange that is, that gravity, the force that keeps your feet on the ground, can also erase the ground itself. In this still place, that contradiction feels comforting, and it isn't empty. No black holes are full of everything they've ever touched, taken, pulled inside. But they don't give anything back. They keep secrets, like oceans keep shipwrecks. They are memory without memory, weight without form. And still, they wait. You imagine drifting near one, the stars behind you, the silence before you. Nothing hurts, nothing rushes. The silence just deepens. You feel, for the first time, what it means to fall without moving. You are still, completely still, but something in the fabric around you begins to shift. Space itself bending gently, like a soft sigh beneath your feet. And slowly, gently, the stars behind you begin to bend to their light, curling inward. They are not changing. You are. This pull is not violent. It is intimate. It doesn't drag you in. It allows you to arrive. You think of how things begin to forget themselves near a black hole. Light forgets how to travel. Time forgets how to tick. And matter, the very building blocks of stars and skin and soil, begins to forget its own boundaries. The universe, it seems, gives you one last place to dissolve, to undash, become dot. It sounds frightening, but in this softness, it doesn't feel that way. It feels like rest. like everything that once strained to be known can finally be quiet, like the body releasing its breath after holding it too long. You understand now, the pull is not toward destruction, but toward stillness, toward the place where all things eventually come to stop asking questions. Not because the answers aren't there, but because they are no longer needed. The stars around you begin to shimmer differently, their light stretched and smeared by the curve of gravity becomes painterly. The sky, no longer fixed, flows. You close your eyes, floating on this invisible tide. The pull continues, soft and sure, like a lullaby sung by space itself. Not words, not music, just the deep, rhythmic hum of being drawn in. And just before you reach the threshold, the place where things no longer return, you pause. What lives at the end of a star's life? What must happen for light to surrender? What final breath does a star take before it folds into darkness? You're ready to follow it there. You drift now deeper into the cosmos, toward a light that no longer shines as it once did. It is not a newborn star you approach, nor one in its brilliance, but one nearing its end. It does not wail or rage or scream against time. Instead, it exhales. Every star lives by a delicate balance. At its heart, atomic fire pushes outward, an eternal breath, steady and warm. But around it, gravity always pulls in, a gentle press. Inward, like a hand resting on the chest. For millions or billions of years, these two forces, outward breath, inward touch, keep the star alive. You feel that balance as a quiet rhythm, like your own heartbeat in space. But eventually, the fuel that feeds the fire begins to run out. The breath falters, the outward push softens, and gravity, patient, waiting, begins to win. What follows is not immediate collapse, but surrender. The star begins to fold in on itself, like a tent being taken down after a long, glowing night. Layers fall inward, shells of elements fusing in final efforts. The core, once strong, buckles under the weight of its own history. If the star is small, like your own sun, it will puff out gently, shedding its skin in soft colors. But if it is massive, truly massive, it ends differently. There's no slow fading, no drifting away. Instead, it folds fast, deeply, utterly, like a thought disappearing mid-sentence. You find yourself at the edge of that collapse. The outer layers fall inward, chasing their own momentum. Temperatures rise, impossibly high. Pressure increases beyond comprehension. The core becomes a furnace, not of light, but of weight. Its own mass crushes it inward until the very atoms can no longer resist. Protons, neutrons, the building blocks of matter, are forced together, beyond what nature usually allows. And then the collapse becomes unstoppable. This is not an explosion, not in the way you might expect. There is a blast, yes, a supernova, if conditions are right, bright, terrible, brief. But what happens after? What remains is what draws you in now. The core doesn't vanish, it's condenses. It becomes smaller, denser, darker. The more it tries to resist gravity, the more gravity answers with silence. Eventually, no resistance remains. The core slips beyond its own surface. It no longer has one. The star has given its last breath, not into air, but into space, into the invisible. And what is left behind is not a flame, but a shadow. not a wound, but a doorway. But this doorway does not swing open, it folds inward, like a paper swan swallowed back into the page, like light stepping behind a curtain that has no seams. This is the birth of a black hole. You imagine it happening, not in real time, but as a feeling, the sudden absence of a presence, the way a room feels after someone has left it. That lingering sense that something was here and now isn't. No fireworks, no final words, just pressure. And then the absence of pressure, just light. And then the memory of it, just matter. And then mystery. The mass that once lit galaxies now curves space so deeply that nothing can leave it. It doesn't destroy space. It redefines it. It doesn't bury, it swallows. And in that swallowing, time itself is caught. You try to imagine what it's like from the inside, but you can't. Your thoughts spiral like the matter once did, drawn inward toward a point they cannot cross. Even your imagination hesitates. And yet, this isn't a tragic end. It is simply change, matter rearranged. A transformation not into nothing, but into something beyond current knowing. A silence filled with consequence. The star, once bright and blazing, now rests in a form that does not shine. But still, it shapes the world around it. Still, it calls to the things nearby. Still, it holds the memory of every reaction it ever fueled, every atom it ever lit. You wonder, if death for a star can be so calm, so complete, what might it mean to vanish into a new shape? What happens now to gravity unchained, to time stretched like thread, to the very space that cradles the leftover breath of a star? And what, exactly, does it feel like to be drawn toward something that no longer remembers how to return? What must happen for light to surrender? What final breath does a star take before it folds into darkness? You're ready to follow it there. You have felt gravity before, every day, in every step. It is what holds your feet to the ground, what shapes the arc of falling rain, what tethers the moon to the earth to the sun, and the sun to its place in the galaxy. But here, now, near the edge of a black hole, gravity no longer behaves like something you know. It does not tug gently at your body. It does not feel like pressure or weight. Here, it wraps around you in silence, changing not your pace, but your path, your clock, your space. It bends everything you understand, not through force, but through the quiet folding of reality itself. Gravity, you begin to realize, is not a force that pulls, but the shape that space takes when mass settles into it. And black holes, they do not merely sit heavy in that space, they reshape it entirely. Imagine placing a marble on a trampoline. Now imagine placing something so dense, so compact, that the fabric beneath it doesn't just dip, it disappears into itself. This is how a black hole curves space. It doesn't sit on it, it sinks into it, and where the curve becomes steep enough, where the slope grows so sharp that even light cannot climb out, there the black hole becomes more than a place. It becomes a boundary, a one-way door, a silent gate, where the face of gravity becomes hidden and strange. It no longer says, "Come back." It only whispers, "Keep falling." You cannot see this warping, but you can feel it, even now, in the way starlight bends around the dark, the way time ticks differently, closer in, the way space stretches, almost sighs, as if tired from trying to stay flat. Gravity here does not care for direction. Up and down, lose their meaning. All paths lean inward. All clocks slow down. This is where gravity stops being a background character and becomes the script itself. You float near the rim of the black hole, not crossing it, not fleeing it, just close enough to sense its geometry. You watch beams of light curve back upon themselves, as though afraid to leave, or perhaps unable to remember how. If you dropped something, a stone, a whisper, a thought, you would never see it reach the center. To you, it would slow, dim, freeze, just above the edge, fading until only memory remains. But the object would keep falling, silently, inward, into a space so deeply curved that the very idea of inside begins to blur. Time, too, warps here. You blink, and the stars behind you age. You breathe, and centuries pass in the outer world. The deeper you fall, the slower your clock ticks. It is not broken, it is obeying gravity's shape. You imagine now what it might be like to look out from near the event horizon, to see the universe race forward, galaxies bloom and wither, stars light and fade, all in the span of a single heartbeat. Time stretches for you. It dances for others, and still gravity has no face. It does not growl or groan. It does not tell you what it wants. It only sculpts the universe in silence, guiding the orbits of moons, the swirls of galaxies, the tumbling of comets. In its deepest forms, like this one, it does not pull, it shapes the stage. You think of Earth, where gravity feels like falling. Here, it feels like surrender, like giving up the straight line and letting space write its own curves beneath your feet. It becomes clear. Now, black holes are not things. They are places where space and time obey different rules. Not because they want to, but because they must. Because mass has told the fabric how to curve, and the fabric has listened. You drift further still, and the stars behind you distort. Not just in color, not just in path, but in meaning. They are stretched, duplicated, ringed around the void like mirrors. This is gravitational lensing, where gravity itself becomes a lens, bending light like glass. Not a mirror you can touch, but one that lets you glimpse how space can be folded like origami. The black hole speaks only in curves. Its language is bending, spiraling, leaning, until everything points inward. Not through demand, but through design. And yet something gentle rests in that design. Not chaos, but precision. Not violence, but inevitability. Gravity, without a face, without a voice, still tells the most powerful story in the universe. It has shaped stars, carved galaxies, painted the cosmic web. And here, in the presence of its purest form, you do not feel fear. You feel reverence. You float on the edge of a place where physics begins to blur. And you begin to wonder, where exactly does that edge lie? What marks the point of no return? What must happen for light to surrender? What final breath does a star take before it folds into darkness? You're ready to follow it there. You drift now toward a boundary that doesn't rise or speak. It has no gate, no sign, no sound, and yet it is one of the most profound thresholds in the cosmos, the event horizon. It does not feel like an edge. There is no sudden drop, no ripple in the fabric beneath you. The space here is just as silent, just as starlit, just as vast. But if you were to cross it, you would not come back. This is the quiet perimeter of no return. Once you pass it, the universe, as far as we know, stops hearing from you. No signal escapes, no light returns, no story is carried back. And yet this horizon is not a wall. It does not push or repel. It does not burn or block. You could glide across it without ever knowing, without even a whisper. The event horizon is a line drawn by gravity, not etched in stone, but woven in space-time. A line that means something different depending on where you stand. For you, from far away, an object falling in seems to slow down. It appears to freeze just above the horizon, its light stretching, reddening, fading into nothing. But for the object itself, for a traveler like you, there is no pause. You cross the line as if it weren't even there, because, for you, time continues, unbroken. Only the universe outside forgets. Imagine standing at the shore of a vast ocean, watching a ship sail toward the mist. At some point, it vanishes. Not with a splash, not with a cry, just a slow fade into gray. That is the event horizon. Not a barrier, but a curtain. Not an end, but a vanishing. And still, you wonder what lies beyond. The physics we know falters. Here, Einstein's equations hold until they don't. Inside the horizon, time and space trade places. Your path forward becomes a path inward. No matter which direction you turn, you are always moving closer to the center. Not because you're being pulled, but because forward has been redefined. To float here, on the edge, is to feel the quiet weight of mystery. Your thoughts press against the unknown like fingertips on glass. There is a sense that what disappears here is not just matter, but certainty. The event horizon doesn't hide answers. It erases questions. What goes in may never come out, but that doesn't mean it's gone. It just becomes unreachable, unrecoverable. The universe loses track, like a page torn from a book and carried away by wind. You feel the power of that, forgetting the ache of an untold story, the beauty of a place that collects endings without needing to explain them. And yet, black holes grow. When something crosses the horizon, it adds to the black hole's mass. The horizon stretches outward, like a breath being held. The boundary expands. So the story may not vanish, it may be absorbed. Still, the question lingers. What happens to the information? Does the black hole remember the things it swallows, or are memories truly lost here? Some say the information is hidden on the surface, etched faintly onto the horizon itself, like whispers in the skin of a bubble. Others believe it is gone forever. You float closer, and the boundary becomes more than a line. It becomes a feeling, a soft line of parting, like the moment just before sleep. That space where the mind no longer clings to the day, but hasn't yet entered dreams. The event horizon is not a death. It is a threshold, like the instant between inhale and exhale, like the final word of a sentence that trails off into silence, like stepping from the shore into dark water, not knowing if you will float, or sink, or drift to another place entirely. There is no turning back, but there is still wonder. You think of all the things that might have crossed this boundary, light from distant stars, comets, planets, broken dreams of galaxies, entire suns that once roared with heat. They crossed, and then silence, and now you hover near that same line. You haven't passed it yet. You are still part of the universe that remembers, still made of stories that can be told. But the pull deepens, not urgent, not loud, just certain, and you begin to ask, What happens as you move closer? What becomes of time, of space, of your very body stretched and surrendered? What does it feel like to fall forever? What must happen for light to surrender? What final breath does a star take before it folds into darkness? You're ready to follow it. There, you are drifting closer now, past the veil, past the line where even light gives up its story. And in this new space, within the grasp of the black hole, something begins to change. Not all at once, not with noise, but gradually, like a long breath being pulled from your body, thread by thread. This is where gravity becomes uneven, where the force below your feet grows stronger than the one at your head. It's a difference so small, so subtle, that at first you don't feel it. But slowly, surely, it begins to pull you into shape, a strange shape. You don't fall like a stone. You stretch like syrup, like a ribbon unraveling, like light itself being pulled thin. Scientists call this spaghettification, a whimsical name for something so strange. It sounds like something out of a child's story, but here, in the arms of a black hole, it is as real as the air you once breathed. Your body, or any object, really begins to feel the difference. Gravity pulls more fiercely on what's closest, and so, inch by inch, you begin to lengthen, not torn, not shattered, but gently drawn. You do not break. You are unwound. Imagine falling feet first. Your toes feel the pull first, then your ankles, your knees, your chest, your head. Each part follows, each second stretched more than the last dot. If you could look behind you, you might see the universe still spinning, but faster now, like a clock moving in fast forward. For you, time slows. Moments lengthen. Your heartbeat stretches out between the ticks, but for the world outside, everything is racing ahead. This is the paradox of falling into a black hole. You move forward in space, but time becomes viscous, thick, and slow. Like walking through honey that deepens with every step. The deeper you fall, the more space itself stretches. And in this stretching, you begin to lose shape, not just physically, but conceptually. You become a line, not a point, a thread, not a form, a question mark hanging mid-air. And strangely, there is no pain, no tearing, no burning, just a quiet redefinition of what you are. The atoms in your body, once comfortable together, are no longer sure what together means. The bonds that held them, formed in the hearts of stars, begin to loosen, not violently, but delicately. You are being whispered apart, and if you could speak, if sound still traveled here, you might ask, is this death, or is this something else? Because even as you stretch, even as your shape begins to forget itself, you are aware. You feel the fabric of space twisting around you. You feel time as a curve, not a line. You feel the strange comfort of inevitability, that there is no turning back, and that, perhaps, there never was. All things here obey gravity's design. It is not cruel, it is complete. It doesn't choose what to keep and what to discard. It accepts everything. You are not being punished. You are being transformed, not destroyed, just rearranged. There is a beauty in that, even in this final moment of shape. You are becoming part of the black hole's story, written into its curves, woven into its silence. And then, perhaps, you are no longer you in any meaningful way. No longer separate, no longer singular. You are part of the fall, part of the deep, part of the fabric that cannot be unstitched. And as your last thoughts float outward, so slow for you, so impossibly fast for the cosmos, you wonder if this is how you stretch. What happens at the center? What lies in the place where all things finally fold? What must happen for light to surrender? What final breath does a star take before it folds into darkness? You're ready to follow it there. There is something strange about time here. Not wrong, exactly, just unfamiliar. You float near the edge of the black hole, and the seconds that once clicked like footsteps on stone now stretch, soften, slow. Time becomes syrup, not the kind that drips, but the kind that holds. You move, and it follows sluggishly. You blink, and the stars behind you shiver and slide forward in fast motion. The cosmos seems to rush ahead, but for you, time refuses to budge. Here, near the event horizon, clocks do not tick in unison. Time loses its uniform beat. It bends with gravity, curves with space, and flows at uneven speeds. To the universe beyond, you appear frozen, as if caught in a single moment. But inside that moment, your thoughts continue. You still breathe, you still drift, you still feel. This is not a trick of the mind, it is the geometry of existence. Gravity, so strong here, pulls not only on mass, but on time itself. Einstein once said time is woven into space, that the two are not separate, but threads in the same cosmic cloth. And the black hole tugs on that cloth so fiercely, so deeply, that time near it stretches, while time far away flows freely. You begin to wonder, what is time, really? Is it a river, a rhythm, a feeling in your chest when you wait too long? Here, time is none of those things. Or maybe it is all of them, just turned sideways. You remember how on Earth, time is measured in pulses, the beating of hearts, the swing of pendulums, the vibration of atoms. But in the presence of immense gravity, even these pulses slow. A second near a black hole is not the same as a second back home. Imagine looking down at your wristwatch, its hands crawling like shadows at dusk. Meanwhile, out in the open galaxy, years are passing. Planets are orbiting, stars are aging, civilizations rise and fall in the time it takes you to take one slow breath. It is not that your time is broken, it is that the shape of space bends. Time like a lens. And you, so close to that deep curve, are seeing the world from a softened, stretched place. You do not feel it in your body. You feel it in everything else. The background stars blur, the universe accelerates, and the sky no longer holds its steady form. You're not moving faster. You're moving through slower time, or perhaps time moves through you more slowly. It's hard to say where time begins and where your experience ends. But this, too, is part of falling into a black hole, not just being stretched in space, but being stretched in time. Even light takes detours. Here, photons curve, stall, whirl around the black hole's edge like dancers at the edge of a whirlpool. They circle endlessly before deciding should they escape or fall in, and time watches from the sidelines. Or maybe time is the circle. Maybe time is the spinning. You begin to picture your life as a thread, a fine, glowing line stretched between two poles, birth and end. But now the thread loops and curls. It slows where it once sprinted. It pauses where it once danced, and the idea of now becomes uncertain. What is now in a place where time moves differently depending on your distance from the center? What is now when your heartbeat might stretch across an entire century? It makes you think of dreams. How long they feel, how real, when in truth they take seconds. Perhaps this too is a dream. Not a false one, but a slower one. A deep sleep in the fabric of the universe. From this edge of time, you can imagine strange things. A future where someone watches you fall, forever frozen on the horizon, never quite crossing. To them, your descent never ends. To you, it has already begun and continues. In your quiet glide downward, you feel not panic, but perspective. Time, you realize, is not a hallway with doors. It is a slope, a curve, a soft spiral inward. It does not tick, it leans. And as it leans, your mind softens, too. Ideas loosen, questions become more fluid. You no longer ask, what time is it? You ask, what shape is it? What color? What direction does it flow? Maybe time doesn't pass. Maybe it pools. Maybe you've been swimming in it your whole life and only now noticed the current dot. And as that thought settles, you begin to wonder if time can stretch, bend, stall. Can it stop? What happens when time itself runs out? You are falling, but not in the way falling usually feels. There is no wind rushing past, no stomach-turning drop, just a slow, persistent drift inward, as though you are being gently carried by a current you can no longer see. You have already crossed the boundary. The event horizon is behind you now, though you never felt it pass. No sudden shift, no flash, no fanfare, just one more breath, and then, inside. In this place, the universe outside no longer watches you. You still exist, but not in the story it tells itself. You are a paragraph tucked into the fold of a page, still inked, still meaningful, but invisible from the cover. And still you fall. Not with speed, but with surrender. Not downward, but inward, toward a center you can't quite name. Here, falling feels like floating. The space around you curves so completely that all directions lean toward one place. No matter which way you move, you are always moving in. The black hole doesn't pull you, it contains you, like a lullaby contains sleep, or a forest contains silence. It doesn't chase you deeper, it simply allows you to continue, and so you do. You pass layers of space that are no longer flat, no longer stretched, but folded, like origami. The universe has begun to crease inward, its edges bending into its own heart. You wonder, softly, if you're shrinking with it, if your sense of self is being folded to dot around you. Light begins to change. There is less of it, not because something turned it off, but because light, like everything else here, can no longer escape. It circles you like a slow tide, spiraling inward, fading at the edges. It feels like dusk, the kind that lingers long after sunset, where the sky remembers color, but only just. You look back, but back no longer means what it did. Space has curved so completely that directions blur. You cannot point to where you came from or where you're going. Everything leans, everything flows. You are surrounded by motion, but held in stillness. Even time feels sleepy here. It stretches and sighs, like a child in a warm bed. Each thought you have takes its time arriving, like a wave washing onto a distant shore. You are not frightened. There is nothing left to resist. The black hole does not demand your fear. It only asks for your presence, and you give it freely, as if you'd meant to come here all along. The deeper you go, the more the outer world fades, not as a loss, but as a release. You begin to forget the sound of clocks, the shape of days, the weight of knowing. You are becoming part of a different rhythm now, one that doesn't need ticking, one that doesn't unfold in lines, but in loops and spirals. And so you fall, but it feels like rest, like curling deeper into your own thoughts, like dissolving into a warm bath of gravity and time. What once felt like descent now feels like return. You imagine being light, a photon trapped in this fold, no longer moving forward, but dancing in slow circles, not imprisoned, just patient. You wonder, gently, is this what peace looks like from the inside? No boundaries, no hurry, just being within a place that holds you completely. You think about the center, the singularity, that final point, that place where everything, no matter how vast, is believed to collapse into something impossibly small. But does it hurt to reach it? Or does it welcome you, quietly, like the last note of a lullaby? You will not feel impact. You will not arrive with a sound. There is no landing here, only convergence. The laws of physics tremble near that point. They do not break, but they forget how to behave. Space and time blur, form and function unravel, and what remains is not a place, but a question. You are approaching it now, not quickly, not slowly, just inevitably. And as you drift deeper, with no direction left to name, you feel less like a traveler and more like a memory, a thought the universe once had, still echoing, still falling, still being. But even memory, given time, can change its shape. And so, you ask yourself, if this is how things fall, what happens when there is nowhere left to go? You drift toward what they call the singularity, a word that sounds neat, defined, but holds within it more mystery than answer. It's supposed to be the center, the place where your long fall comes to rest. But as you move closer, you begin to sense something stranger. There is no center here, no point you can point to, no landing, no surface. What lies ahead is not a place you can reach, but a boundary you can only imagine, the edge of what you're allowed to know. They say the singularity is infinitely small, that all the matter which once made up a star, and now, perhaps, even your own body, is compacted into something with no size but infinite density. But how can something have no size? How can all that weight, all that heat, all that mass become a point? Your mind presses against the question like a fingertip to glass. It wants to touch, to see, to measure. But the closer it gets, the more the idea disappears. You've left behind space as you knew it. You've surrendered time. Here, near the singularity, those rules no longer hold. Gravity does not pull, it consumes. Light does not travel, it spirals into stillness. Time does not pass, it folds. And physics, that faithful map-maker of reality, lowers its pen. Equations stretch into riddles, constants waver. The compass spins. The singularity isn't broken. It just isn't. Bound by the same script, it is the place where understanding stops, not with a crash, but with a quiet pause, not because there's nothing there, but because there's no way to describe what is. Imagine a sentence with no end, a color with no name, a feeling you've never felt but somehow recognize. That's what the singularity is. Not an object, but a limit. You are drawn closer, not pulled, not pushed, but guided by the slope of the universe itself. You feel smaller, but not diminished, more like you're being distilled. There is no resistance here, no walls, no thresholds, just the quiet hum of what is, without explanation. The atoms that once defined you, hydrogen and carbon, oxygen and iron, are now indistinguishable from the fabric itself. Not broken apart, but reconfigured into something the universe does not yet know how to express. And maybe that's what the singularity really is. A question that hasn't yet found the right language. A poem that hasn't yet learned how to rhyme. It's strange to feel this calm, to float so close to a place defined by uncertainty, and yet feel no fear, only wonder. You are not being erased. You are being absorbed into the deep logic of reality, into the part of the universe that still dreams, that everything here happens at once, or maybe not at all. The difference between moments dissolves. You are inside a place that holds no time, and therefore, every time, it could be the end, it could be the beginning, or perhaps those two are the same. You think back to the stars. You left behind the galaxies turning slowly, the starlight streaming across emptiness. They move to rhythms this place no longer plays. They still follow rules you no longer need. And as you rest in this closeness, this non-place, you begin to imagine something quietly hopeful. What if the singularity isn't a collapse, but a seed? What if all this folding, all this compression, isn't the end of something, but the preparation for something new? Black holes are known for swallowing, but perhaps they are also where new shapes begin, new symmetries, new songs. In this stillness, you can almost hear it, not with ears, but with attention, a pulse, a pause, a possibility. You have fallen to the edge of understanding. You are resting at the place where meaning blurs. And now, a gentle question begins to stir in you, not a demand, not a cry, just a quiet curiosity. If space and time can fold this far inward, could they ever fold outward again? Could what goes in someday come out? You've seen light move. You've watched it stretch across oceans, pour through windows, wrap itself around corners, like a cat chasing its own tail. It is fast, tireless, the swiftest thing in all existence. And yet here, it slows. It stutters, it hesitates, not because it wants to, but because it has no path forward. You float in a space where even light cannot escape, where the very geometry of reality tells it to turn back or fall inward. Photons, the messengers of sight and warmth, do not burn or flicker here. They spiral like dancers caught in a whirlpool, their steps looping tighter with every turn. It begins with a tilt, a subtle lean in the fabric of space-time, a gentle slope, too small to feel, until it becomes everything. Light, which once darted in straight lines, now finds its lines folding inward, not by choice, but by the curve of the cosmos itself. You imagine a beam of starlight, once on its way to somewhere else, now trapped, curving forever around the black hole's mouth, never escaping, never arriving, just circling, forever, caught in the act of falling. There is no light here, because light has no exit. There is no brightness here, because brightness needs an audience. And in a black hole, there is no one left to see. You think of the sun, how it radiates in all directions, how its light touches the skin, feeds the leaves, paints the clouds. A black hole is the opposite. It does not offer, it receives, it does not shine, it swallows, and yet it is not violent, not hostile. It simply has no outlet. It is a pocket so deep, so steep, that light can only fall inward, not vanish, not disappear, but be pulled into silence. If you could toss a flashlight forward now, its beam would stretch, bend, curl, like smoke. You wouldn't see it reach a wall. You wouldn't see it fade. It would simply curve out of view, swept into the blackness, not because the light is broken, but because space itself has folded in on the path. Even light must obey gravity's design. Even photons, with no mass, must trace the fabric like marbles on a curved sheet. You pause and consider this. How strange that something so fast can be so easily redirected, that the very nature of light can be softened, curved, coaxed into spirals. You remember that nothing moves faster, not wind, not fire, not thought, and still, even light must yield here. Even light must surrender. That's what makes the black hole invisible. Not because it is nothing, but because nothing escapes it too. Tell the world it is there. You see stars around it, warped, twisted, duplicated. Their images bent by the black hole's lens, but the black hole itself remains dark. Not because it lacks presence, but because it lacks reflection. It is not a shadow. It is a silence. And in that silence, you feel something ancient. A hush that predates language. A stillness that does not beg to be seen. This is why black holes were once thought to be fiction. Because how do you find something that does not shine? The answer came through watching what light could not do. Through seeing stars dance strangely near something unseen. Through observing gas spiral and vanish. Through listening not to sound, but to the absence of light. You realize now, the black hole does not just consume matter. It consumes stories told by light. A galaxy glows because its parts communicate with beams, bursts, flares. But here, no messages make it out. No narration, no witness. Just the slow, endless folding of light inward. And somehow, there's a kind of grace in that. A kind of humility. The brightest things in the universe call attention to themselves. But this does not. It has no interest in being seen. No need to announce itself. It simply exists, so dense, so curved, that the universe looks away, not in fear, but in awe. You drift closer, and for a moment, you imagine yourself as a photon, fast, tireless, pure, sent out from some distant star, free until the space around you bends and bends and bends until every direction becomes down. You are not destroyed. You are rerouted, pulled not toward a flame, but into a cradle. And as you vanish into the dark, you feel no loss, just a new kind of stillness. You are not ending. You are returning. And now a question flickers across your thoughts, gentle and glowing. If not even light can escape, how can anything ever leave? You've come to think of black holes as absolute, silent, final, untouchable. A place where light disappears, where time folds inward, where stories lose their thread. But now, in the soft dark, a whisper rises. Not a voice, but an idea. It comes from Stephen Hawking, a mind that looked into the silence and found something unexpected. He said black holes are not entirely black, that they glow, not with brilliance or heat, but with something softer, fainter, like the fading ember. of a once burning star. This is Hawking radiation, a quiet warmth that seeps from the edge of darkness. Not from deep within, but from just outside, at the trembling lip of the event horizon. You pause. You've seen how light cannot escape once inside, but this is not light escaping. It's light being born right at the edge. It begins with a flicker, a fluctuation in the fabric of space itself. Empty space, it turns out, is never truly empty. It writhes gently with invisible pairs, particles and antiparticles, appearing and disappearing in quantum breath. Most of the time, they cancel each other out. They exist for the briefest heartbeat of time, then vanish as if nothing happened. But near a black hole's horizon, something different occurs. One particle falls in, the other escapes. The one that escapes becomes real, a fragment of energy, a piece of light. It drifts outward, away from the black hole, carrying with it a whisper of warmth. You can't see it, but it's there, a sigh of radiation, soft and persistent. And in this quiet release, the black hole changes. Each particle that escapes steals a little mass, just a sliver, a thread cut from the whole. Over time, the black hole shrinks, very, very slowly, not with a roar, but with a slow, endless exhale. You imagine a mountain evaporating, one grain at a time, blown gently by wind you cannot see. That's what Hawking showed. Even the deepest gravity cannot keep everything. Even forgetting has limits. A black hole, no matter how vast, cannot last forever. Given enough time, ages beyond ages, it will evaporate into silence. And in that thought, you find something oddly comforting. This isn't destruction. It's release, not a collapse, but a letting go. Black holes may swallow stars, bend space, still time, but even they must one day return what they've taken. Not all at once, not loudly, but gradually. With dignity, you picture the universe in its far future, quiet, dark, stretched thin, a place where galaxies have drifted apart, where stars have cooled, where only the quiet breath of Hawking radiation remains. Tiny glimmers flickering from the last black holes as they dissolve into space like melting snow. And you wonder, what happens at the very end? Does the last black hole leave behind a trace, a particle, a pattern, a final whisper that says, "I was here"? Some think a remnant remains, a shard of memory, a knot too small to untangle. Others think it all vanishes, that even the memory of falling is eventually erased. But in this chapter of cosmic thought, certainty isn't the point. Wonder is. Because Hawking's whisper reminds you, the universe doesn't simply take, it also gives. It balances. Light, though silenced, finds its way back. Energy, though swallowed, returns to roam. And even in the darkest places, there is motion. You rest beside this idea, holding it like a pebble in your palm. Something small, but weighty. Black holes glow, not like suns, but like truths, faint, slow-burning, and patient. And you realize, even when something seems final, it rarely is. There are always questions left behind, always echoes. A black hole's glow may never light your face, but it lights your understanding. You are not just falling now. You are circling an idea, and in its orbit, you begin to ask something new. If black holes lose mass, if they one day disappear, then what happens to all they held? Where do the stories go once the pages fade? Where does memory live when the vessel is gone. You float in the presence of something that seems untouchable. A black hole, quiet, massive, still. It feels like an ending, a place where rules stop working, where nature takes a breath and looks away. But the laws of physics don't fall silent here. They soften, yes, bend, maybe, but they do not break. The black hole speaks their language, whispers it through warmth, through pressure, through the slow burning rhythm of entropy. It may look cold, but it has temperature. It may look simple, but it has complexity. You begin to feel it, not as heat against your skin, but as an idea settling into place. Black hole thermodynamics. The science of what can still be measured in a place where almost nothing escapes. Stephen Hawking, again, opened the door. He showed that black holes radiate, and with that simple truth, another one followed. They must have temperature, because to radiate is to release energy. And to release energy, even faintly, is to hold heat. Not the kind you'd feel from a stove or a star, but a more delicate warmth, a softness that says, this is not truly still. You realize something important. The more massive the black hole, the colder it becomes. Small black holes glow hotter, evaporate faster, dance more brightly in the quantum night. Their temperature rests just above absolute zero, their whispers too faint to catch, and yet they are not lifeless. They are full of entropy, a word that means disorder, possibility, complexity. A black hole, simple in shape, contains more entropy than the star that formed it, because it holds in its shadow every possible arrangement of what it has swallowed. You can't see these arrangements, you can't name them, but they exist, like hidden pages in a closed book, still part of the story. Entropy is nature's way of counting options, of measuring the ways energy can dance. And in the black hole, that dance continues, inward, unseen. You feel it as a hum in your thoughts, a vibration beneath the silence. A black hole is not a hole, it is a system, a physical object, subject to the same rules that govern stars, gases, and flames. It has entropy, it has temperature, it even has pressure, and though it sounds strange, a kind of surface area, not a hard wall, but the event horizon, a border, a skin of sorts. The surface area of this border tells you how much entropy it holds. The more matter it swallows, the larger this surface becomes, and with it, the number of possible states inside. This is the mystery. The inside is invisible, but the surface sings the song. Information swallowed by the black hole seems to vanish, but the horizon records its presence. It stretches to accommodate it, holds the weight in form if not in content. You reflect on this, you begin to see how nothing is ever truly lost, only hidden, only translated into new terms. Fire consumes, but leaves behind heat, ash, light. A black hole consumes, but leaves behind entropy, curved space, and time itself held in a tighter grip. You imagine touching this horizon, not with a hand, but with thought. It would not burn, but it would resist. It would push back, not like a wall, but like the idea of a boundary that cannot be crossed. And still, it glows, slowly, softly, almost imperceptibly. Its radiation, its temperature, its entropy, they remind you that this darkness is not blank. It is active. It is expressive. It obeys the rules, even when those rules grow strange. You're beginning to understand that the black hole is not an outlaw. It is a participant, a node in the great web of laws that define our universe. It does not break the pattern, it deepens it. In this silence, you hear physics continuing its dialogue, not with shouts, but with sighs, and it whispers something hopeful, that no system is ever fully closed, that even the most final seeming shape still connects, still evolves, still remembers. You are not watching the rules fall apart, you are watching them stretch to meet a new frontier. And as you drift in this understanding, another thought begins to form. If a black hole holds temperature and entropy and a record of what it's consumed, could it also hold memory? Could information be encoded, not lost? You are drifting close now, not into the black hole itself, but around its edges, where the last light lives. This is the realm of the accretion disk, a luminous halo that swirls like a crown around a king that does not speak. Here, matter does not fall quietly. It circles, first tugged by gravity, torn by speed, dust, gas, rock, plasma. They spiral inward, not with stillness, but with struggle. Friction heats them, collisions ignite them. The disk flares. This, you realize, is the final performance. Before matter vanishes, it glows, not faintly, but furiously, brighter than a million stars. A warning fire on the lip of forgetting. You watch this light, and it tells you a story. Everything that falls first resists. It circles, twists, clings to the edges of what once was. And in doing so, it burns brighter than it ever did in peace. The accretion disk is not calm. It is chaos made beautiful. Particles race around the black hole at speeds approaching the speed of light. They flatten into a disk, compressed by gravity, ignited by motion. The heat rises. The disk shines in X-rays, a glow invisible to your eyes, but unmistakable to the universe. It is here that many black holes are first found, not by their silence, but by this noise of light at their edge. You imagine standing at a safe distance, watching this great whirlpool blaze. It would look like a golden ring, thin, fierce, precise. If the black hole is absence, the accretion disk is its presence made visible. You are seeing matter's last cry, its final broadcast before it vanishes behind the horizon. And yet, not all of it falls. Some of the gas flung into orbit is not swallowed, but launched, blasted outward in jets that rise perpendicular to the disk. Narrow beams, moving faster than thought, pierce the cosmos from either pole of the black hole. These are relativistic jets, streams of energy and particles shot out with such force they travel across galaxies. And you wonder, how can something so strong fall inward and still throw pieces of itself outward? This too is the paradox of the black hole. It devours, and yet it shines, not from its core, but from the struggle around it. The disk is where physics becomes feverish, where magnetism dances with motion, where temperature and time twist together to create the brightest darkness in the known universe, and all of it, every glowing thread, exists only because of the fall. No accretion disk, no fire, without the pull of the abyss. You think of the stars, how they burn through fusion, slowly, gently, for billions of years. But this light, this glow around the black hole, is different. It is short-lived, violent, the result of falling in, not holding out. You wonder what it feels like to be part of that disk, to be dust torn from a comet, or gas stripped from a star. circling tighter and tighter, your atoms growing hotter, your glow rising with every turn. Would it hurt? Would it feel like fear or surrender? Or would it feel like becoming pure energy, the heat of motion itself? No longer a thing, but a flame. This is not peaceful light. It is desperate light, radiance pressed from resistance, and even as it shines, you know it cannot last. Every orbit brings it closer. Every moment thins the distance between glow and nothing. Eventually, the matter crosses the threshold, the event horizon. Its light ceases to escape. Its voice falls silent. But for now, it speaks. And it speaks in color, in flares, in lines too bright to bear. You look again at the disk, and it reminds you of a memory you can almost hold, but can't quite keep, a childhood dream, a name once spoken, an ember still warm in your palm. It is the echo before silence, the song before sleep, and even though it is light, you feel its sadness, because everything glowing here knows what's coming, and still it glows. You begin to wonder, if the black hole holds no light, but the space around it blazes, then what truly defines darkness? Is it the absence of light, or the refusal to let it go? You rest with that question as the disk turns once more. A spiral of fire circling a heart of silence, and now, as you drift onward, another mystery begins to rise. If the black hole can gather light, and yet still leak warmth through Hawking radiation, could there be a deeper code written in that light? Could the chaos of this glow hide some kind of memory? You drift in silence. But somewhere, far away, two shadows are dancing, not gently, but with gravity's full intent. Each black hole is a universe of weight, spinning, pulling, curving space around itself. And now they spiral together. They were once distant, born from separate stars, from different deaths. Each collapsed into darkness alone, a silence sealed by time. But space is wide, and time is patient, and slowly, across the ages, they found each other. Now they orbit, not in wide, lazy circles, but in fierce, tightening loops. Each turn brings them closer. Each motion bends space, twisting the invisible grid beneath them. You can't see their path, not like a trail on a map, but you can feel the rhythm, the way the universe pulses in their presence. With every rotation they send a message, not in light, not in sound, but in ripples. These are gravitational waves, the trembling of space itself, moving outward like rings on a pond. You imagine a bell struck in silence. No noise, but the air moves, the world shifts. That's what happens when black holes collide. They ring the cosmos. The waves they send don't shimmer in the eyes. They stretch and compress the space you live in very gently, like a breath drawn across the galaxy. These waves travel for millions, even billions of years, unhindered, untouched, carrying with them a story of two great silences becoming one. You remember how the universe once seemed still, but it isn't. It moves, even when you do not see. And then, on Earth, in 2015, we felt it for the first time. Two black holes collided over 1 billion years ago. Their final dance released a wave that rolled through galaxies, across voids, through clouds of dust and starlight, until it reached us. We didn't hear it, we measured it. A tiny stretch, smaller than an atom, caught in the arms of an instrument, built to listen for silence trembling. It was the first direct touch of gravity's breath, proof that space is not fixed, not unmoving, but alive, elastic. And this union, this cosmic embrace, wasn't small. Two black holes, each dozens of times more massive than our sun, spiraled inward and merged. And when they did not just become one. They became more. A new black hole was born, larger, deeper, a monument to the collision. And in that moment, a piece of their mass turned into pure energy, released as gravitational waves. You pause on that thought. Mass becoming movement. Weight becoming a ripple. A transformation so deep you feel it in your bones. Not metaphor, not magic. Just Einstein's promise fulfilled. E equals mc in its truest form. You wonder what it looked like, but there was no light, no explosion, only the curve of space, tightening, then releasing. A whisper after the storm. What happens when black holes collide is not destruction, but union. They do not fight, they merge. Their event horizons stretch, touch, and then become one. The boundary shifts, the silence grows deeper. But so does the connection. You are witnessing not an end, but a redefinition. Two pasts folding into one future. And still the waves ripple. Still they stretch space as they travel away, announcing to every galaxy, something happened, something changed. It is hard to grasp the scale. These waves pass through everything, your body, your world, the spaces between atoms, and yet they do not harm, they do not disturb, they simply pass. Like the memory of a breeze on a sleeping cheek, you begin to understand. The universe keeps a record, not in light, not in sound, but in rhythm, in the bending of time, in the pulse of space. And collisions like these become verses in a poem, too vast to read all at once. But now we can listen. Now we have ears not for noise, but for silence in motion. You wonder how many other collisions are happening right now. How many black holes are spinning toward each other, in places no eye has ever seen. The sky, once still, is alive with invisible movement. You feel that truth settle. Gravity doesn't need light to speak. It only needs time. And as these giants merge, as space sighs and reshapes, another thought begins to form. What if the waves they leave behind carry not just motion, but memory? What if something remains of all that was lost? You hold your breath, as if silence could help you see better. On a screen, framed in soft light, a circle glows. Not a perfect circle, it flickers at the edges, like a candle in wind. A ring, golden orange, thick in some places, thin in others, dot, and at its center, nothing, a round, quiet void. A darkness that is not a shadow cast by something else, but a shadow created by gravity itself. You are looking at the first image of a black hole. It isn't a photograph in the usual sense. It's not light bouncing off a surface. It's not an object catching the sun's attention. It's an image stitched from whispers, radio waves gathered from a planet's worth of telescopes, working together like eyes across the globe. They waited, listened, synchronized, like monks in silent prayer, watching the heavens through instruments of precision and awe. And when all those quiet glances came together, this was the result, a ring of light surrounding the absence. You stare into it now, and for a moment, you feel it staring back. This is not the black hole itself. No camera, no lens, no eye can see into that darkness. But what we can see is the glow of matter, caught in the final swirl, the accretion disk, burning just outside the point of no return. The light from that disk bends. It stretches and wraps around the hole, forming the ring you see. The gravity is so strong it curves the path of light into a loop. You're not just seeing the front of the disk. You're seeing light that has circled behind, curled over the top, looped under. You are seeing an illusion drawn by the bending of space. That ring of fire is a portrait painted by Einstein's equations. And the blackness in the middle, the shadow, is what the black hole claims for itself. Not light, not matter, not time, only silence. And yet this silence tells a story. To capture this image, the Event Horizon Telescope linked observatories around the world, from deserts to mountaintops, from the cold of Antarctica to the dry skies of Chile. Each telescope collected radio waves from a galaxy far beyond our own, where a black hole billions of times the mass of the Sun sits at the heart of Messier 87. And for days they gathered the data, terabytes upon terabytes, so much that the internet couldn't carry it. They had to fly hard drives by plane, like messengers in a myth. And when the signals were finally combined, filtered, aligned, shaped, and sharpened by algorithms and human hands alike, there it was, a shape no one had ever truly seen, but everyone believed was there, not because it had been photographed, but because its presence bent the world around it. You realize this image is not proof, it's poetry, not in words, but in light and absence, in geometry. In trust, we see the ring because we understand what the black hole should do. We see the shadow because we know how light should behave when space is curved this deeply. Science became vision. Vision became belief. Belief became reality. And now this image sits in your mind like an icon. A symbol not of darkness, but of knowing. You are not just looking at a picture. You are looking at a prediction confirmed. A theory held in the palm of the universe. Einstein, over a century ago, described what this moment might look like. And here it is, as if time folded his thoughts into a lens and reflected them back to us. The ring is not a boundary, it's a consequence. The center is not a hole, it's a horizon. And the picture is not silent. It speaks. It says, this thing you feared to imagine, it is real. But it also says, this thing you could never touch, you can now see. You think about all the nights people have looked at the sky, wondering what lay at its heart. All the stories of gods, of dragons, of cosmic wells. And here, after centuries of myth, is the truth, beautiful and quiet, not monstrous, but majestic, not violent, but inevitable. And the light that outlines it, that is matter's final moment, captured mid-fall. Even as it vanishes, it creates. Even as it lets go, it shines. You wonder what else waits in the shadows. What other shapes we cannot see, but might someday learn to feel. Because this image is not just of a black hole. It is of a new way of seeing. A reminder that presence can be known through absence. That what cannot escape can still leave a trace. That silence, when framed with care, can speak louder than light. You close your eyes, and the ring remains, burned into your memory, like a question that never fades. And you ask, softly, if we can see the shape of nothing. What else might light reveal as it curves through the deepest dark? You have followed the darkness, traced its pull, listened to its silence, felt the light slip toward it, like a thought fading into dream. Now, in this final chapter of shadow, you rest beside the black hole one last time. But something has changed. It is not eternal. You've learned this, not from myth or story, but from physics, from the quiet logic of Stephen Hawking's insight. Black holes, they evaporate, not all at once, not in bursts or shouts, but in the softest whisper, a slow release of being particle by particle, as if even the darkest things must eventually let go. This process has a name: Hawking radiation. You don't feel it, but it's there. Tiny pairs of particles forming at the event horizon, one falling in, one flying free. The black hole loses a little energy each time this happens. And energy, as always, is mass. So it shrinks, invisibly, imperceptibly, like a candle whose flame is eating away at the base instead of the wick. In your lifetime, the black holes, you know, will not change. They are vast, their evaporation slower than thought, slower than stars, slower than decay itself. But the clock is always ticking, even for them. You imagine the far future, long after galaxies have stopped being born, long after stars have burned through their last reserves. A universe, cold, quiet, almost empty, and still. The black holes remain the last monuments to gravity's dominion, but even they cannot stay. They continue to leak, to lose, to slip back into the nothingness from which they were made. Trillions of years will pass, perhaps longer. Time stretches beyond any number you can name. And then, at last, a flicker, a final whisper of warmth. A last particle leaves, in a bang, not in a blaze, but like breath leaving a sleeping body. You sit with that truth, let it settle around you. Even the most powerful forms pass, even the deepest wells dry, even darkness fades. It's a gentle lesson, not a sad one. Everything moves, everything changes. Even in stillness, there is a current. Even in silence, there is a rhythm. And you think of the journey you've taken, from the first pull of gravity, to the horizon of no return, to the glowing rings, the spiraling collisions, the possibilities of tunnels and time. All of it, woven through a single idea that even what seems lost still shapes the world. So what remains after the black hole is gone? Where does its memory go? Is the information truly lost, or does it live on in the space it once curved? Physicists still ask these questions, still argue, still search, still dream, because black holes, even in their absence, leave questions behind, like footprints in cooled ashdot. And perhaps that's the gift, that even the things that vanish teach us how to see. You lean into that thought, into the quiet. No more spirals, no more fire, only the slow exhale of the universe itself, relieved, perhaps, to have carried so much and let it all go, somewhere far from now. A last black hole sighs out its final light. And the darkness left behind is not fearsome, but clean, still, whole, and you carry the story, not in equations, not in numbers, but in wonder. In the soft corners of your mind where curiosity curls up to sleep, you have followed the path to the edge of knowing. You've watched the night open its arms and fold itself in. And now, as you rest, you understand the universe never needed to be loud to be heard, and maybe, just maybe, even silence remembers the light. You rest at the edge of knowing, not because there is no more to learn, but because this is where the mind begins to dream. Black holes pull you inward, but now your thoughts move outward, beyond the surface, beyond the fall, into what it followed the facts, felt the pull of gravity, watched light bend and disappear, heard the whisper of Hawking's glow. But now you wonder, what if a black hole isn't only an end? What if, just maybe, it's also a door? Physicists have asked this too, not out of fantasy, but from the edges of equations, where numbers behave like riddles. Among the answers they find, some speak of bridges, wormholes. Imagine space as a soft, stretchable sheet. Place 2 points far apart. The journey between them is long, but if you fold the sheet, the points touch. That fold, that shortcut, is what a wormhole might be. A tunnel through space-time. A passage where here becomes there, and then becomes now. Your mind floats in that idea, not rushing, just wandering. Could black holes be the mouths of these tunnels? If one side opens through a black hole, might another open out through something else? A white hole, a mirror twin that spits matter out as violently as the black hole swallows it in. White holes exist in theory. They are solutions to equations, like ghost limbs of the same cosmic body. But we have never seen one. Still, you drift through the thought, a black hole devours everything. A white hole would refuse to take in anything at all. Out of one, into the other, a journey across space and time, through a throat of gravity so tight even light must hold its breath. It sounds impossible. And maybe it is, because wormholes, if they exist, would be fragile. They might collapse. Before anything can cross to hold one open, you'd need exotic matter, a kind of mass that repels rather than attracts, a substance that defies the way things normally fall. And yet, in the quiet of your mind, you picture it anyway. A tunnel through the void, lined with curved geometry, opening somewhere far, in another galaxy, another epoch, another version of reality. Could information travel through such a path? Could memory survive that fall? You think of the paradoxes, how time might loop, how cause might chase effect, how nothing might lead to everything, and still you feel the pull of the idea. Not because it's proven, but because it's beautiful. Science isn't only about answers. It's about the spaces between certainty, the silence where the next question waits. Wormholes appear in solutions to Einstein's field equations, not in the middle, but at the farthest edge, where gravity becomes a knot and space begins to twist in on itself. You might never travel through one, you might never even find one, but thinking of them expands your sense of what might be possible, because the universe does not only surprise you with what is real, it also stirs you with what might be. Could we send messages through a wormhole? Could we see a reflection of ourselves on the other side of gravity? You float through these thoughts like a dreamer passing through walls. The math is hard, the answers uncertain. But your imagination follows the thread anyway. And perhaps that's what wormholes are best at, not transporting matter, but transporting wonder. They connect ideas the way they might connect places, folding the space between thought and question, between knowing and not yet knowing. You picture 2 black holes, not colliding now, but tethered. One in one corner of the cosmos, the other light years away. A tunnel stretched between them like a string between 2 cans in a cosmic game of telephone. Could they speak? Could they share? You don't know. No one does. But the equations allow for the possibility. And so, in a way, so does the universe. You return now to the black hole, to its familiar, mysterious shape. But this time, you see it not as a wall, but as a gate. One that may open only through thought, only through time, only through the patient bending of what we believe is fixed. Because sometimes, not even a black hole is what it seems, and in its deep geometry, in its folded space, might lie a promise that nothing is final, that absence might lead somewhere else, that even endings might echo forward into something more. And as you drift in that thought, a corridor of maybes, a hallway made of curved light, you find yourself drawn toward a softer mystery. If space can curve like this, if gravity can fold it, if wormholes can stitch to distant places together, then what happens to time when it takes the same path? Does time also bend?